Well, the Bucks about to be trash.
This is Breaking News with your host, Queso, the one and only.
Breaking news. The 5'5" can't get it done with one of the greatest teams ever. Couldn't get it done with an MVP, James Harden. Chris Paul is rumored to be getting traded. Gotta get hydrated. Getting traded to the Milwaukee Bucks. Hold on. Let's talk about it. Now, the Milwaukee Bucks have been dominant. Last year, they finished with the best overalls record. They have an MVP from last year in Giannis Antetokounmpo. And this is in a much less stacked East, much less stacked NBA as a whole. Oh, I forgot my whole. And before I break it down, hit that subscribe button if you're new. Hit that like if you're new, subscribe button. If not, your grandma's a hoe. All that shit. Let's go. Anyways, so this boy Chris Paul, they want him on the Milwaukee Bucks. They're offering up Chris Paul and a 2021 pick for Bledsoe, 4 players, Bledsoe and Chris Middleton. Have a look over here to see on the report. Now, Chris Paul for Bledsoe, heads up. I take it. That's a good trade because it frees up cap space for OKC, and OKC can't act like getting rid of Chris Paul isn't doing them a favor. I think it frees up cap space. Chris Paul is still a great player, and if we had the level of Chris Paul is going to play this year and forever, or for the remainder of his contract, I would be so for this trade. But my problem comes, and this is not against Chris Paul. I really like Chris Paul. I really, really do. He a cool nigga. Going out, giving shoes to the chair and shit. That's a cool nigga. My problem is we are watching the decline of Chris Paul, and there's no shame in that. One of my favorite basketball players of all time is Dwayne Wade. Now, did I want that Chicago's Bulls Dwayne Wade on my Portland Trailblazers? No, you can go ahead, Flash. You do what you do. Stay over there. You gotta know that Chris Paul is going to just be getting worse every year. Year in and year out, Chris Paul is going to be getting worse. And this is what age does, injuries. He was already undersized, but his basketball IQ and athleticism was able to make that height discrepancy he had between a lot of players non-existent. Chris Paul going to the Milwaukee Bucks. The Milwaukee Bucks is still a Giannis. They still had a lot of upside because eventually the Milwaukee Bucks were looking like once Giannis becomes a veteran presence, these niggas can start seriously contending for championships. I thought that they might, before all these trades happened, they might take it to the East, but now the East is so stacked, and this is with the Kevin Durant injured. You have to start prepping for the future. You got to look forward. What are you going to do with Chris Paul in 3 years? Are we sure Chris Paul, he's already bow-legged. Are we sure Chris Paul is going to be able to walk in 3 years? Talk less of play basketball. Come on, let's be real, folks. Let's talk about it. I don't want Chris Paul on the Bucks because Chris Paul isn't going to be what the Bucks need, especially if they're to get rid of some of their pieces. I think Eric Bledsoe is one of the most underrated players in the NBA. His defense and somewhat reliable three-point shooting, I think, is a giant difference maker. It's what pushes them up. He's not a scorer. He's not a great scorer. His three-point shooting can be spotty on nights. But he gives you these points when you need them, and he's able to get crunch time stops. I don't like how people just discredit what a 3 and D is. It gives you the 3 and it gives you the D. Pause. Chris Paul, I don't want him on the Milwaukee Bucks. I think for the next 2 years, it'll make them a serious threat. But just looking towards the future, there's a reason that the Rockets got rid of him. Because they knew they're in it for the long game. Russell Westbrook still is, believe it or not, developing. James Harden is still getting better. Chris Paul is on his descent. That's not what you necessarily need to compete in today's NBA. Chris Paul, you got your max contract. Stay in OKC. Then, when you're willing to take a veteran role, go ahead. Because I would be cool with Chris Paul going to Milwaukee if he was going to play six man. But because Chris Paul is, first off, they're getting rid of Bledsoe, their starting point guard, so they're going to have to put somebody in there. They're not going to trade their starter for another, or just a max contract player and then put their bench player in as a starting point. So if you want to come play six, that's cool. And once you're done with this max contract, I think reality sets in on you're not dumb. You're not dumb, and you can coach a basketball team. Literally coach the basketball team. We've watched Chris Paul take the clipboard from Mike D'Antoni and draw up the defensive schemes. Once you're willing to go play six man, come on, we take you on the Blazers. But not right now. This is a very weird point in Chris Paul's career. It's when he's getting paid like a Clippers Chris Paul, but he's playing like a Rockets Chris Paul. It's just not the same thing. Chris Paul. Not even Chris Paul. Milwaukee Bucks. I'm just saying you can do better. Tell me, have you heard that lately? Hold on, I got a drizzy back.